the British Campaign Medal awarded between 1882 and 1889, issued to R. Bain, 2nd Regiment Irish Huss, for presence during both the Tel Aviv and Tamai battles of 1884. The medal number is 1973, original medal. This is an original British campaign medal. So the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute takes pleasure in honoring Ruston Smith, Good Fellow recognition for her contribution to the world. I invite Ruston Smith and Lakshmi Narayanan, the chairman of SWFI, to conduct a good talk with the awardee.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have today with us our next Good Talk speaker, the Goodfellow Award winner for the evening, Mr. Ruston Smith. He is a non-executive chair of the Tesco Pension Fund and Tesco Pension Investments Limited. He is also the non-executive chair of JP Morgan Asset Management, non-executive chair of Smart Pensions Limited, non-executive chair of the Pension Management Institute, chair of Grocery Aid. The great Bob Marley said, "The greatness of a man is not in how much wealth he acquires, but in the integrity and in his ability to affect those people around them positively." We have with us today Ruston Smith, who not only manages wealth, but also dedicated his life in impacting people's life. I had multiple conversations with him. Most of the time, my conversation started and ended with how to touch people's life. I'm happy to present Ruston Smith in the front of you people. Please welcome him today. You have been in business, you have been a professional business whole life with an extensive and distinguished career in the business. There are any specific lessons or values from your formative years that continue to shape your decision making as a prosperous entrepreneur?
So first of all, thank you very much indeed for the award. It's really appreciated. I think that, if I think of some of the entities that I chair or I'm involved with, one in particular, the Pensions Management Institute, it's the academic institute for the UK for the pension fund world. It has over 7,500 members, but represents around about 1.8 trillion pounds based upon consultancies that advise on that money, asset managers that manage that money, or administrators that actually administer it. So these are big numbers. You make big decisions in your life. You sit in board meetings, but coming back to the point about values, what's really important to me is thinking about what we do and how we influence everyday people's lives. And when I was 18, my parents, they moved abroad. And so I was working. I don't have a first degree. So I was working, I was studying, and I had a mortgage at 18. Maybe I was quite fortunate, but it was only a small house, but in quite a poor community. And what I recognized at that time, if I was coming home quite late, even though the area that I lived in was relatively poor and people really didn't have anything to give to you, my neighbors, my elderly neighbors, would come round if I was coming in late and give me a dish of food. It was a real act of kindness. If my car broke down, and it did frequently, then there were always people in the local community where I lived that would help me. I tried to do my best to reciprocate that kindness, but one of the things that I learned in the way that I helped them, listening to them when they had questions about just basic financial stuff, is that there's a world apart between the things that we talk about, the regulation that we put in place, and the decisions that we make, and the way that everyday people try and understand the very basics of that, the choices they have, and how they think through the right choice for them. And so whatever I do, I always, and I think of this story a lot because it touches me. I recognize that I'm here tonight. I'm very privileged. But there's no reason why I shouldn't be back in that same house. People work really hard. Some people have 2 to 3 jobs and a home to run and a family to look after. And so it's really important to me that whatever I'm doing, that we think of the impact we have on society, but more important than that, it's as we go out tonight and we see people who probably welcomed us into the building, that we do our very best for them, and that everything that we do actually has a consequence for everyday people.
Let's talk about the grocery aid.
Yeah.
I want to understand what's the logic behind it, why you started that initiative, how it's going.
Okay, so Grocery Aid basically is a charity set up in 1857, and it looks after people that work in the grocery industry. So that's from small shops to large shops like the Tesco's, down the supply chain like the Unilevers. Anybody that, if you remember in the pandemic, we were very, very lucky to continue to get food, and the grocery industry worked incredibly hard to do what they could to make sure that we had food on our tables. So that's the industry that Grocery Aid supports. But again, bringing it back to everyday people, many of those people who maybe deliver food in the lorries to your home so you can unload it and then enjoy that with the family. Many people, the reality is that to get by, they have more than one job. And still they struggle through no fault of their own, just circumstances. So Grocery Aid is there to help them not just financially, but to help them more broadly across life. So if, for example, they had a problem with their rent, they were going to be evicted, we would help them step in. And not just about giving people money. It's about making sure we look after their welfare, so we have lots of mental health support, but also helping people get to the place they need to get to and putting a plan in place to support them. So that you don't just hand over a solution to an individual problem, you try and support them more generally. One example is that coming out of the pandemic, children were going back to school. Sadly, many parents couldn't afford to buy the school uniform for their children. So we decided to put some money aside. In the first year, it was probably around about £600,000 to £700,000. And we had a very structured approach in the way that we distributed this money to buy the uniforms. We opened the helplines at 6 o'clock in the morning, sorry. By 8 o'clock, all the money had gone. And the reason I tell you that is because, you know, as we sit here tonight, there are people, that's the demand for the support that we were offering. And we didn't meet the demand because clearly there were people after 8 o'clock that didn't get the support they needed. So this year we're putting aside around about 1.1 million, and we hope to be able to support many more people, and hopefully their children have school uniforms to go to school and feel proud.
So it's reaching individual homes, every individual person.
Correct. Yes. And families, of course.
Impacting individual lives.
Yes.
It's a great thing. Let that continue.
I have to just say, though, there is a team of people that do this great work. So I am just a very minute cog, but they are superb. We have a great team, lots of volunteers. And we also have around about 16,000 people in the industry that have supported the events of Grocery Aid as well. Because, of course, to do what we do, we have to raise money. And therefore, we put on events. But it's important that people support those events and make the donations so that we can support the grocery industry.
You are sitting in various boards. You are in the top position. When you go in the top, always it's alone. How do you choose your advisors? Or in a situation, let me rephrase this, in a tough situation, whom do you ask for advice?
So I think that I'd like to think that on the boards that I sit and also, you know, within the teams that I play a part, that you surround yourself with good people. And those good people support you and guide you. So, of course, I'm very lucky to have a a family that's very supportive, and they're always there for me. But when you're in those situations, it's about asking for help. And actually, I think that's one of the most important things. When you don't know the answer, and we don't always know the answer, never be afraid to ask for help. And also to work as a team. I'll just talk about a little story if you don't mind. So I was at an insurance dinner and somebody said to me, do you fancy joining us? We're going to do a row across the channel and it's all for charity. And I thought, well, nobody's ever going to ask me that again. So why not? I thought, I'll do that. Now you can see I'm hardly athletic, but I did follow the training. I did follow the diets. But what happened is we got to the Ramsgate Harbour at 2:30 in the morning to start the row. And I'd never thought of that. I was probably a bit naive, but they said, it's too rough to start. We're going to have to wait. Now, I was in the harbour, so obviously the water's quite flat. Then all of a sudden, the group of us that were going to row across the channel, it all went very quiet because nobody really anticipated. I think we all thought we'll be there, we're rowing away, be nice and calm, and we'll have a lovely time, and the sun will come out at around about 6 o'clock. But anyway, eventually at 4:30, we were allowed to go out, and the water was choppy. And it's at that time when the average time to get across this channel is around about 16 and a half hours, you really start to question yourself. And I have to say that, it was a bit of a low feeling within the boat to start with. We've been rowing for about 3 hours. But coming to this point, there was just one person in the boat, and they had a moment of inspiration. They put on their phone, they put some music on, and they had a Bluetooth little speaker. Suddenly, that changed the dynamic of the boat. We then started not just singing, but talking. And ironically, the pace of the rowing started to pick up. So what I'm trying to say is there are moments in time, it doesn't have to be a particular person. But if you've got a catalyst, you've got somebody who sees that moment of inspiration and they change the dynamic, that's so powerful. And in fact, we got across the channel in around about, I think it was about 12 and a half to 13 hours. The average time was 16. And that's really because, that person had the initiative. We all picked up, we worked as a team, we supported each other, and then we got to where we wanted to go. And I have to say, I had the best Premier Inn breakfast in my life the next morning. It was wonderful.
I see that a lot of time you spoke about financial independence. And most of your life, you have been a part of the pension funds. Let's talk about the financial independence. What's your view on it?
So I think, first of all, to be financially independent these days, you're quite fortunate, is the truth. Once upon a time, probably 20 years ago, you got to retirement. It might have been 60, it might have been 65. You had a pension, you knew what you were going to get, called final salary, and you got your state pension. Today, people are saving. They're taking money, they're paying contributions, they're being invested, and that's what we all do. We invest their money for them. But then when they get to retirement, there's a pot of money, probably more money than they've ever had. Now, it's unlikely to be enough. So the problem now is, how do you support people? They've got the money, they don't know what to do, but they've got to make choices, and it's got to last them for the rest of their life. The conversation is now much broader. So in terms of that sort of dependency or the being financially independent, I'm working on a project at the moment with the Pensions Management Institute and Schroders, looking at lifetime savings. So what we're trying to do is look at opportunities, look at the barriers and the challenges that people have, and then think about how can we break those down, and then how can we help people throughout their lives, but when they get to retirement, start thinking that maybe if you did buy a house and you invested in your home, you've got an asset there that you could use. If you put money aside for a rainy day fund, you've got that, as well as your retirement state savings and also your state pension. So what we're trying to do now is to create greater confidence, because something like 47% of the UK population don't feel confident in making financial decisions. So we've got to try and find a way to make things simpler and make things more accessible and help people bring everything together, so that when they get to retirement, they get the guidance they need, which might not be advice, but somebody to sit with them and help them understand the choices, what's the best approach, and then help them manage that money for the rest of their lives.
I have came across a lot of people speaking about financial dependency and independency. But if you look at that, there is something in between dependency and independency. You take anybody in life, they have to go through 3 stages: dependency, interdependency, and independency. You take an actor, you take an engineer, you take a doctor, or you take a lawyer. Everybody, when they walk out of the school, when they start their career, they are fully dependent. Then they feel to some extent, okay, I can become now to somebody. They try to open up, if it's a lawyer, they open up their own practice, bring in few lawyers below them. If it's a doctors, they open their practice, bring them few doctors below them. If it's an actor, then they will say, okay, now I can act independently, I can do things by myself. They all move to an interdependency stage. Then comes an independency stage. 95% of the people get stuck in the first phase of dependency. Only 4% people move to interdependency, and only 1% move to an independency stage. Why I'm saying this, in your thing, you have been successful because you started one thing very, very clear. When I looked at your profile, you always created people where they can impact by your services. You have created a lot of people and interdependent people. In other ways, you have been helping people. The interdependency stage is what making people to be independent. There is nothing called a dependency to an independency. Somebody cannot jump into that one. So taking that, I want to ask you, what is in your career, do you want to recommend or do you want to give an anecdote about conquering obstacles? When somebody going through the phase of an dependency to an independency. If you have any remarkable feats, can you please explain those anecdotes?
So I think that, in people's journeys, and people are at different stages of being, dependent, interdependent, and then, completely independent. I think that what we need to do as a financial services industry is try and find a consistent way. And by the way, I think this applies universally globally. I don't think this is unique to the UK. But what we need to do is to try and find a way to support people through their life, helping them to understand the choices they've got, the opportunities they've got to invest. So I'm talking back again about lifetime savings. And then when they get to retirement and the time when they want to slow down, which might mean they continue to work, by the way, or they might stop, depending on how fortunate they are, how do we help them navigate that journey? And I suppose the other challenge, of course, today is that when people have got savings and we're all living longer, how do you make sure that that money continues to be available to you to make sure when you need it, it's there for you, particularly, with the needs for care today?
The given chances to alter the facet of global financial, if you have been given a full independency, what would you do?
So I think from a global financial institutional perspective, I would try and create a collaborative vision right across the world. Now, we're already doing that through climate change, but we've started the journey. We can see what's happened just in the last 12 months. And in the UK, for example, we've already had 50% more rain than we might have expected for a typical year from where we are today. So we've got a lot of work to do. When we think of deforestation, we're now starting to understand the damage we're doing to nature and biodiversity. And we've got to now start thinking about connecting what we're doing in terms of climate change and all the reporting we're doing and all the way we are investing. We're putting money into enablers to improve and to facilitate climate change transformation. But there's another phase now, directly looking into nature. And sometimes the solutions are not clear. So if we could produce more seagrass around our shorelines, then inevitably that would absorb and actually capture the carbon that's being emitted into the environment. But the problem is, how do you put that into an investment proposition so that by investing, people see a return? And it may well be that we've got to think differently about how we do that. So for me, it's about clear vision, making sure that we do the right thing, we work together collaboratively, and again, we start thinking of society, because we can see what's already happened. We can see the world changing at a rapid rate. We need to work harder and more together to make the change we need to see.
A personal question. Tell me something, a greatest challenge that you faced in your personal life, or an obstacle that you faced in your personal life, and what was a lesson that you learned, and what the lesson you want to share from your personal life to the people.
I think sometimes probably, what I've learned is there are times when you think you've got a solution, you can put it in place and you can get to where you need to be, and you can't. We've all faced that. We've got a plan. It looks good. We're all behind it. Let's execute it, and then we can get to the solution. That's when frustration comes in. But I think that, the way I look at the world is, if I'm thinking about people now who are starting their journeys, their careers, for me, the learnings are the richest, because, where we hit those roadblocks, where we then start thinking differently, exercising our minds, asking for help, working collaboratively together, that for me is when exciting things really happen. So to be honest, I've got such a long list of things that have gone wrong, as I'm sure some of us have. But the reality is I've always embraced that, because it's an opportunity to learn and do things differently. And the key thing is keep going, but always ask for help and work as part of a team.
It's a powerful word, ask for help. So I want to ask you the next part. You have been working with Pension for Purpose. Can you talk more about that Pension for Purpose?
Yeah, I'll be fair. I have done some work. I heavily support Pension for Purpose. I need to do more, you reminded me. Pension for Purpose is helping pension funds understand what they can do to be a force for good. And there's never been a better time than now for us to all come together with the assets we've got. We've got, 2 trillion or more pounds of assets under management in the pension fund industry in the UK. We know we have to make a return, because we've got to deliver those pensions for people when they get to retirement, because that influences, their lifestyle, how well they'll live, and even to the point of mental wellness. But equally at the same time, we can put that money to really good work. We can literally make it a purposeful pension to be able to deliver good things. And climate change is part of that, but it's also going a little bit further. How can we have positive impacts? So we're doing a lot of work at the moment throughout the UK. We call it stewardship. So you own assets in a pension fund. You influence the companies that you're investing in. You encourage them to do the right thing. You encourage them to accelerate, moving to a net zero position. But then we've got a big societal change as well. And for me, it's really important that we start thinking about, as we move faster and faster as we do, and particularly with artificial intelligence, have we thought about communities? Have we thought about people that are going to be affected by that? And how can we support them? Investment in human capital, training. How can we do that to make sure that we have sustainable communities and countries for the future?
How do you define success in your way of looking at life?
So I think for me, it's about creating a legacy that's had some really positive social good. So I go back to everyday people and making sure that, what we do, it has a really positive impact and something that's sustainable as well. So this isn't about creating a legacy to be remembered by. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's about making sure that we have one life. Let's make the most of it. And I think Lakshmi, you've got a quote yourself, and you say, "I'm so excited about life." And that's the point. We've got fantastic opportunities. We've got influence. We can do good things. And I think for me, that would be the measure of success, making sure that we leave a better world behind us.
Let me end this conversation with my way of thinking one thing. The most sacred fund in the whole fund industry is running a pension fund. Why do I say that? Sovereign wealth funds are just managing excess money of the country. Sovereign development funds are the capital rising to just rise the growth of the country. Other private equity funds, venture capital funds, everything has got a different view towards it. The pension funds is the only fund protecting the life when they can't make money. So it itself being running a pension fund, you are doing a great social good. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Mr. Ruston Smith for being with us today evening, for sharing his life